So it's that time of year again, back in Geneva, where Rolex is releasing their watches for 2025. This year's a little different though. We get an exclusive sneak peek of a new model, a new name, known as the Land-Dweller. This collection comes with 10 different references in 3 different case materials. Let's go through everything you need to know. This is more than just a new name, as this watch introduces many updates, including its case, bracelet, dial, and a 5 Hz movement that marks a new chapter with a novel escapement concept that is mechanically groundbreaking. So this watch does come with 18 new patents with its release. Yes, 18. But if you look at just the general aesthetic of this design, you see a lot of familiar origins with its looks. Although the oyster quartz will likely be mentioned by many when inspecting this piece for the first time, it's important to recall 2 earlier references that more appropriately inform this design. One was back in 1969 with the Beta 21 quartz model, a project of nearly 24 Swiss manufacturers to create a viable quartz alternative to a mechanical watch, and the Rolex Datejust reference 1630 of 1974. The design aesthetics of these 2 legends are embedded within the Land-Dweller, most notably an integrated case concept. So some might be asking, where does this sit in the general hierarchy of Rolex? And where this one is positioned from the brand between the Datejust and the Day-Date. The Land-Dweller comes in 2 case sizes, 36mm and 40mm, with 3 case options: a Rolazor steel case in white gold bezel, a complete ever rose gold case, and a platinum case with a recognizable ice blue dial. The Rolazor simply comes in the 2 size configurations, while the Everrose and Platinum will have 4 variants each, including an option for diamond set markers and bezels at 36 and 40mm. The 36 and 40mm cases are not new frontiers for Rolex, but the integrated nature of the cases creates an entirely new format to become familiar with in the modern Rolex framework. Now, just running through the specs for these watches, you have the diameter of 36mm. On that model, you have 9.6mm in thickness and a lug-to-lug of 43.5mm. In contrast, for the 40mm option, you have the same shared thickness, but the lug-to-lug jumps out to 46.5mm. Those familiar with an integrated watch do recognize that typically they wear larger than the dimensions. But in the case of this new Land-Dweller, it actually wears entirely true to size, partially because of how the links are going to meet that case being perfectly draped down. Shifting over to the case and bracelet specifically, it showcases tight tolerance that we come to expect from Rolex. The top of the case is vertically brushed to an intense degree. This continues down to the outer links of the bracelet with the polished case lines and exterior link chamfers, as well as interior links of the Jubilee adding a reflective splash to the classic formula. This bracelet introduces what Rolex is calling its flat Jubilee, which compared to the traditional Jubilee will differ aesthetically in the following ways. 1, it will include broader outer links and smaller interior links. 2, the tops of the links are flat. And 3, the center links are raised to a higher plane compared to the outer links. The bracelet tapers to its crown clasp, which is discreet in its inclusion, although comes with the compromise of lacking micro adjustment. So in order to get the right sizing, you will have to make do with these smaller screwed in links to nail the precise fit. Finally, the way the bracelet attached showcases a new attachment system that calls on 10 components, including ceramic tubes that house the spring bar while reducing excessive wear. The twin-lock screw-down crown sits in its conventional position at 3, working with the redesigned water sealing around the crystal and something you might not expect, a sealed exhibition case back to ensure 100 meters of water resistance. Another small detail comes with the fluted bezel, as Rolex has reduced the amount of flutes to 60 in total, compared to the 72 of the Day-Date and 180 of the 1908, leading to more prominent reflections. So looking at the crystal with anti-reflective coating on the underside, we have a whole new dial concept, this honeycomb motif pattern. And when you're first examining this dial, it does feel awfully familiar, but as you start to get into more of the backstory around what is being done here, you recognize that there's a lot of new things being brought to the table. Now, starting outward and working in, we see a departure from the usual with the inclusion of a sloped chapter ring, setting the perimeter instead of simple linear markings directly on the dial. The applied dial markers will vary depending on whether diamonds are chosen. In most cases, the dials will feature chromolite contained hour indicators in most areas apart from 12, 3, 6, and 9, with the latter 2 following the open 6 and 9 concept containing chromolite. The diamond variants will contain all precious metal stick markers. In the linear hour markings, another detail to call out is how the chromolite is not fully housed by the metal surrounds. Instead, the shorter ends freely expose the luminous material. This patented technique showcases the end of the markers being cut with razor-sharp precision, which is noteworthy given how difficult luminous materials are to work with. Moving back to the 6 and 9 markers, these are not the same as those found on the Explorer or Air King. This is a brand new style of marker harkening back to the open 6s and 9s on vintage date wheels. The double AR coated Cyclops resides at 3, with the remaining dial text staying true to modern Rolex form. At center is a completely redesigned handset featuring chromolite through the entire central body of the hour and minute hands, with the stick second hand hinting at the geometric backdrop sitting below through a hollowed counterweight. Now, before we discuss the movement, we have to also mention the honeycomb pattern. This design was achieved using a femtosecond laser with raised honeycombs and then recessed channels that offer a concentric line micro pattern within. The Rolazor and the Ever Rose gold cases come with a mirrored white color and a satin finish, whereas the platinum case variant showcases a dynamic sunray finish, which is spectacular in its ice blue. So with this new Land-Dweller, as you're noticing throughout, there's a lot of new developments that we've yet to see from Rolex. But where these developments change to just being subtle developments to drastic shifts is with this new escapement concept. This is a revolutionary shift in mechanical watchmaking for a brand of this scale. 18 new patents pertain exclusively to the Land-Dweller, and of that 18, 16 involve this movement known as the caliber 7135. To understand the magnitude of this, it's important to remember that Rolex has long been a leading proponent of classic watchmaking, only thoughtfully dipping its toes in the water to more modern materials. In 2015, Rolex unveiled the Chronergy Escapement, which involved the geometric reworking of the traditional Swiss lever optimized for efficiency by way of larger escapement wheel teeth and longer, thinner pallets, reducing escapement drop and therefore improved energy efficiency. The Chronergy Escapement was undoubtedly a breakthrough, although it still relied upon a traditional lever escapement system. So with the release of this 7135, this also marks the moment where we're seeing the production of a 5 Hz caliber by Rolex, but also just the use of a 5 Hz caliber. Back when the Daytona was using the El Primero, that watch movement was reduced down to 28,800 vibrations per hour, making this even more of a monumental fact about this piece. The reason for its infrequent use comes down to 2 primary downsides: a quicker use of power and an increase in friction with the additional beats per second that can wear down the components. This is especially true in a traditional Swiss lever that produces a significant amount of sliding friction. So Rolex's answer to providing the upsides of high beat calibers but also bypassing all of the downsides is something called the Dynapulse Escapement, a new escapement released with this watch. The Dynapulse was specifically designed with efficiency in mind and drastically differs from the traditional Swiss lever setup. The Dynapulse is made up of lightweight silicon escapement components that are highly resistant to magnetism and were meticulously designed to create a rolling motion rather than a slide motion. Now, to explain how this works, the going train takes the stored energy of the mainspring and connects with a large wheel known as a transmission wheel. This wheel, instead of interacting directly with a pallet fork, is first met with 2 sequential distribution wheels, designed with custom teeth. The energy from the transmission wheel is fed to one of the distribution wheels, with the help of a raised pinion at the first sequential wheel's axis. From here, another component comes into play known as the impulse rocker, which with the help of the impulse jewel on the balance roller will enable the locking and unlocking of the 2 sequential distribution wheels and in turn provides power to the oscillator. The balance wheel is made of brass containing 2 microstella nuts for finer adjustment, with the hairspring being made of the brand's proprietary siloxy material. Although it has been used in the past, siloxy is a seldom used material by the brand, being an abbreviated form of its material makeup, silicon and silicon oxide composite. This balance spring is highly resistant to magnetic fields, shocks, and offers consistent stability amid temperature variations. The balance spring is manufactured at a very exact length and shape for precision and ensuring isochronism of the oscillator, with its structure extending to mirror the broader balance bridge. Finally, the balance staff has been modified with ceramic construction working in tandem with the redesigned Paraflex shock absorbers, with what Rolex calls its double cone internal structure. These are positioned at both ends of the balance staff and enable the precise repositioning of the staff in instances of shock. In totality, this movement ushers in a new era for Rolex, sharing characteristics with a natural escapement concept veiled in modernity. The movement offers a 30% increase in efficiency compared to the 3230 series of calibers, a 5 Hz frequency, superlative chronometer standard of -2 to +2 seconds a day, exhibits hacking seconds, and still upholds a power reserve of 66 hours despite the increased rate. The movement design is derived from the 71 series of calibers from the 1908, mirroring the Rolex Côte de Genève finish across the bridges. And some might be asking, what is Rolex Côte de Genève? It's a mild modification to the Côte de Genève finish where an additional slight polished groove is added between each band. Additionally, we have machine anglage edges and a solid gold rotor. The use of this movement architecture is also an important one, as this movement is roughly 2 millimeters thinner than that of the 3230 series, which made machining the small wheels for the escapement that much more difficult. So I know I threw a lot of different information at you for how this movement operates, but this is a truly groundbreaking concept that Rolex is putting forth here. But if I had to just sum it up simply, what this watch and caliber is able to do is to be ultra energy efficient while being able to be resistant to magnetic fields and also bypassing the downsides that come with friction. So whenever I enter this time of year and try to anticipate what's coming for Rolex, I think the best mentality to have is just to not anticipate anything, because I never know exactly what they're going to do. With the release of the Land-Dweller, yes, we're getting a new concept with a collection, we're getting a new name. There's many different aspects of this piece that are being brought forth that are novel to Rolex. And on the surface, you might be asking though still, where does this all sit between the Datejust and the day date? Is there enough differentiation? But I do think it does have this ability to stand on its own. The Datejust has this perfect elegance about what it's going for, being also more of an entry point for the brand for those that want versatility, but also want the upped type of elegance that comes with more of a dress formula. But then you have on the high end the day date, which follows the same form, but is going to be done more frequently in precious metals and has more of a eye-catching look with its bracelet and how it's projected off the wrist. So when you have a starting price around the $13,000 range for these Land-Dwellers, it is nicely seated between these two. And also if you looked at all of the silhouettes of these models and got further zoomed out for what they are, you recognize that they all have a very distinct way of going about expressing themselves. You have an integrated style watch that for many people, I would say for the last 5 or 10 years that we saw this craze of integrated sports designs, we always were thinking, when was the oyster quartz going to come back? Or at least a watch that could represent many of those core ideas. And it only makes sense that Rolex would do this. But what wasn't expected is what was showcased on the inside, some of the new processes for dial making, the case and how it works with the bracelet and getting a new Jubilee at that. But this marks an important moment in Rolex history, and it really starts with the movement. Rolex was very slow to adapt to modern materials, but why would they? I mean, it makes sense. They had superlative chronometer standards of -2 to +2 seconds a day. They really set a standard when it comes to chronometry at their price and position. But with this watch and with this caliber, this completely reshapes the landscape of Rolex going forward. They wouldn't directly state it when we were getting a presentation of what this movement was about and what this watch was about, but it did seem very clear that this was a step forward to a new generation of calibers for the brand. The 5 Hz caliber is one thing, but to be able to uphold this amount of efficiency and then fully embrace silicon as a material type was something that we've yet to see from Rolex, but now we're seeing it. And doing it in a process that's with a new escapement that has never truly been done before. So to round up my total opinion about this watch, I think it's a welcome addition. It sits in a very distinct pocket between the Datejust as well as the day date. But the real story here is about what this watch represents for the future of Rolex. New calibers, new chronometry, and what is possible going forward that I would imagine we would see throughout many collections in the years to come. But all right guys, that is the exclusive first take of the new Rolex Land-Dweller. Like to see your comments down below. What do you think of this new piece? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Leave those comments down below. Also, if you enjoyed this video, we have plenty more content coming, but please encourage us with a thumbs up. We're gonna be here for the entire week, so if you wanna stay up to date with what's going on in the industry, be sure to be subscribed here, but also teddybaldishar.com. At the time of releasing this video, we will have many different articles live on the site and have dozens and dozens of articles going out throughout the week. So if you want to stay in the loop around the industry, be sure to be subscribed to our newsletter. Check out teddybaldishar.com. But all right, guys, I'm going to get back to work. A lot to do here in Geneva. Thank you so much for watching. Be well, and I'll see you all very soon.